Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. This podcast is dedicated to EAS employees of the U.S. Postal Service and members of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. So, pour yourself a cup of coffee and join us for today's episode. And now, here's your host, Robert Wakefield.
Good morning, Branch 32, and good morning to our EAS friends across the country. So great to have you here. Welcome to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. I'm your host, Robert Wakefield, the president of Branch 32. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much. All right, let's go ahead and let's pour that first cup. This March 29th, join us in celebrating a century of trust and a century of service. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union is hosting its 100th annual meeting celebration at the luxurious Sonesta Hotel from 4:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Mark your calendars for a night of history, festivities, and fun. For more details and updates, like and follow our Facebook page and be a part of this monumental milestone. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union, people helping people since 1925. Okay, for our first cup this morning, I want to talk about a subject that you deal with every single day. You do this every single day, whether you really realize it or not. You may do it hundreds of times a day. You may do it 1,000 times a day. But every single person does this very thing I'm going to talk about today, and that is making decisions. On a typical day, when you wake up, you're going to decide when you're going to wake up. You'll make that decision. You'll make the decision when you have your cup of joe, whether you have cream or sugar in it. If you have a work day that you're going to work, you will decide on what clothes you're going to wear, what shoes you're going to wear, what kind of socks you're going to wear. You'll make a decision that morning whether you're going to bring donuts into the office or not. And you'll also decide on your commute, how you will actually get to work today. Will you take the subway? Will you take the motorcycle? Or will you take the Lamborghini? Now, let me just stop right here. If you have a Lamborghini and you're a postal supervisor, please call me at 1-800-RIP-YOU-OFF. That's 1-800-RIP-YOUOFF. I would love to talk to you. You may very well have a Lamborghini. I don't know. But you'll make a decision on which vehicle to take or which way to take to get to the Postal Service, whatever it is. And then, after all of those decisions that you've made leading up to your day, you get to the office and suddenly you are in a decision-making coma. Isn't that crazy? I mean, you've made all these decisions to get to work, and then when you get to work, suddenly you cannot make a decision without getting it blessed by this person or this person or this person. Now look, we're going to explore some things today, and not every decision you need to make on your own, and we'll get to that. But the thing that just bothers me is the fact that as EAS employees, we are the decision makers for the Postal Service. That's why we were hired. That's why we were promoted. And I can give you example after example of times where people made decisions and they got in trouble for it. One example is a plant supervisor. Plant supervisor is called into the manager's office, the MDO's office, and is given an investigative interview. And the reason the investigative interview is taking place is because of the decision that he made to work a clerk on their off day, on their scheduled day off. And he didn't have the prior approval. I hope you saw the air quotes that I just did. Prior, I can't even say it. Prior approval. He didn't have it approved beforehand. Now, again, there are times where that supervisor is in a pinch. Let's face it. You've got 4 or 5 people that are out. You've got one person that you know will come in that will fill a gap, that will help you get the mail out. And oftentimes you act in desperation and get that person in here, and I'll deal with the consequences later. A consequence of your decision. There was supposed to be some kind of form that he was supposed to fill out, and he was supposed to consult with his manager, and they were supposed to consult with their manager and call 911. Who knows what all the steps were? But there was a bunch of steps seemingly that had to take place before this supervisor could make a decision that would help his operation. Now, that's just silly. We've got to be sure that we do the right things when we're making these decisions. Another example is that there's some offices in our district, especially, that if you're going to work a rural carrier on their SDO, on their scheduled day off, well, you've got to have this manager's approval and this manager's approval and this one. Postmaster called me up one time and he said, look, I've got 3 call-ins from the flu, and I've got a regular sitting at home on their scheduled day off that will come in and carry the route. But I've got to get this person to approve it. I got to get this person to approve it. It's 9 a.m. I've got to get this mail out. I've split routes and all this stuff. What do you do, right? It's just another example of how you're supposed to be making decisions that are best for the office. So, I've got another example. It happened to me. It happens to all of us. We were inspecting, it was time to inspect rural routes. You have to do that once a year, especially before the old-fashioned mail counts that are long gone now. But we had to actually count all the pieces of mail, every single piece that they took out and put it on these forms. And it was really a lot of fun. I just thoroughly loved it. I would have rather watched paint dry. But I had to ride these routes. You had to inspect the routes prior to the mail count starting. So I made the decision. I was given the task from our bosses. I made the decision that I'm going to knock out all these routes in a week. And that's going to require me to work my clerk on some overtime. So that's what I did. I brought my clerk in, and off I go to the Wild Blue yonder, inspecting a rural route. The next day, I get a call from my MPU wanting to know why I used that clerk in an overtime status when I could have been at the office at that time. I was a level 18, so I could have worked the window. I got there at 6 a.m, rode a route all day. I don't feel like working in the afternoon. He can do it too. He can do that. That was my decision. And I felt good about it because I was getting my task done that needed to get done. Well, you've got to be careful when you make some decisions. That is for sure. Some decisions that we make are not ours to make. You got to know where your limitations are. For example, how many times have I heard of a supervisor or a postmaster approving a grievance or settling a grievance for thousands of dollars at like the step 1 level? Now, that's not smart. That's not using your resources carefully, if you will. That's just not a good thing to do. But you've got to know what you can settle and what you can't. And a perfect example of this was another example in my career. A regular rural carrier came up to me. I was an officer in charge at an office, and he came up to me with a very noble cause. He said, Robert, I would like to take a year off, leave without pay, for a mission work in Ireland. And then I would like to come back here and, work my rural route again. Well, I was just the OIC, and I looked up the regulations and the regulations in the ILM 514.3, authority to approve. It says installation head. Installation heads may approve requests for LWOP that are not in excess of 1 year. Now, I had the ILM backing me up, but because I was an OIC, an officer in charge, I thought it best that I ask my MPU for advice. So that's exactly what I did. And he said, well, we have this new pay for performance metric. I don't know, employees on the rolls or something, some kind of nonsense for MPA. And he says, yeah, we can't let him go. Well, I came back and I disapproved his request for LWOP simply because I asked someone else and got advice from my manager. It's just an important thing to know what you can make decisions on and what you can't make decisions on. LucidChart.com is a website that I discovered. Lists the 7 steps of the decision-making process. And here they are. Number 1, identify the decision. That's important. Gather relevant information, like I looked up the installation head thing in the Elm. Gather the information that you need. The third thing is identify the alternatives. All right, is there anything else you can do before you make the decision? Weigh all the evidence is number 4. Number 5 is choose among the alternatives. Number 6, you take the action. And then finally, you reviewed your decision. Those are pretty good steps on how to go about making a decision. Now, these aren't guaranteed or anything, but they're good guidelines. You know, as an EAS employee, you are a decision maker for your office or for your part of the plant. You make decisions that have to be done. So make decisions that make sense to your customers, your office, and the Postal Service. And if a decision is somewhat questionable, ask your manager for guidance. Even follow that up with an email. Remember this. If you get nothing else from this little talk that I've had today, remember this. You are one bad decision away from being disciplined. On the big decisions, don't go them alone. Always ask your manager for assistance. Well, I'm going to make a decision right now. I'm ready for our second cup. For 100 years, that's 36,525 days, 876,600 hours, and over 52 million minutes, the Nashville Post Office Credit Union has been a beacon of financial support for the postal community. Since 1925, we've been here for life's big moments and everyday triumphs. Each day, hour, and minute, we are committed to our mission of people helping people. Join us and be a part of that tradition. The Nashville Post Office Credit Union. People helping people since 1925. And for our second cup today, I wanted to point out, and many of you have noticed this, and some of you may not have, NAPS headquarters has updated the website. naps.org, naps.org, and you can go in there. They've updated the website. It looks really nice. It's a very clean look, very fresh, an updated look. We've had that other website since the War of 1812. It's been around for a while, so it's really good to see it being refreshed. And there's a new section on there called the Member Portal. And on that, you can get all things that pertain to NAPS. Now, if you're on your computer, the Member Portal will be on the upper right-hand corner. If you're on your phone, you have to hit the little 3-line menu and get on there where it says, it gives you all the menu items. And then at the bottom of it, it says Member Portal. You'll then see a section on there that is where you enter your email and password. So you enter the email that NAPS has at headquarters, okay? And when you enter that, then you hit the Reset Now button. Don't put in a password because it's going to send you the forgot password part. That's what you need to do. Reset that now. They'll send you an email to reset your password. You follow those instructions, and then you'll be able to get in to the portal of naps.org. It really looks good. I think that you're going to enjoy it. I know I enjoy going there. If you're listening, well, you're obviously listening because I'm talking to you. No, if you have a website, if your branch has a website, please send that website to Sheena Williams and let her send that to naps.org people so that they can get all of the branch websites on this page. I think that's a great thing for you to do. If you haven't done so, do that today. All right. So that's all I have today on today's edition of the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast presented by the Nashville Post Office Credit Union. You know what the next thing to do is. You know the drill. You like the podcast, you subscribe to the podcast, and you share the podcast with everybody you know. Okay, well, I don't know about everybody, but share it with all your EAS friends and your NAPS members. You know what? I haven't heard from a branch lately. What branch are you listening from? Be sure to let me know at SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com or send me a message there on the Saturday Cup of Joe website. We really do appreciate you listening. Thanks so much. I'm Robert Wakefield. And remember, every great weekend starts with a great cup of Joe. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Saturday Cup of Joe podcast. Please note that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of Robert Wakefield and do not necessarily reflect the views of the National Association of Postal Supervisors. We welcome your questions and comments, so send those to SaturdayCupOfJoe@gmail.com.